Hello and welcome to Tales from a Graybeard. I'm your Graybeard Dave. Today I'd like to start a series in reviewing some of these laws and razors and sayings that I just love. These are sayings that you hear commonly in the industry, or maybe some of them less commonly that I'll go over, but they're ways of summing up some human experiences that we often find difficult to understand in ways that are easier to understand and easier to remember. If we think of them like design patterns, like singletons and factory patterns and MVC, they're a way of talking about common problems that have common solutions, such as a singleton. You can say, I want a way of instantiating an object, a global object. So a singleton is, I want to make a static function that calls a constructor and initializes it and returns a global object. And it's easier just to say singleton. Similarly, these sayings are common ways of talking about things just to make it easier, but at the same time, they're there to remind us of some of this human experience. I'd like to start with Goodhart's law. And Goodhart's law is, when the metric becomes the goal, the metric ceases to be useful. I find this one very useful, particularly in management, where we're always talking about how to measure things. And one of the most common examples where we fail at Goodhart's law is when the manager comes to the team and says, I'm going to reward you for every bug that gets fixed. Money, time off, whatever it is. And so the engineers go out there and they find a ton of bugs to fix. You start off, you have 100 bugs in your queue. You get 1,000 bugs fixed and you have 200 bugs in your queue. How did that happen? Well, people know how to do what they're being motivated to do. And so if you're motivating them to fix bugs, they'll find a ton of bugs and get them all fixed. Man, they fixed a lot of bugs and you're further away from release. That's because the metric, number of bugs fixed, became the goal, where the goal should be working software. So some common examples. I don't know what is blinking, beeping at me. That's my machine and not yours. So some common examples that we see of this all the time. The bugs thing we just talked about. Story points is another one. When you reward the team based on the number of story points they fix, they'll inflate the story points. They will come up with easy to fix tickets and do those. And you won't actually end up with more working software. You'll just end up with Jira showing more story points. Sales, outside of tech, sales is really common here. You tell salespeople that you need to meet your quota, you need to make this many sales, and the salespeople will give discounts, they'll promise features that can't be delivered, and then you end up with a mess because now you're chasing the sales that the salespeople made rather than selling the software that you have. So you should be rewarding salespeople on the amount of software that actually gets deployed and accepted without needing custom engineering. But that's harder. So this gets caught up in sales, and it's when sales doesn't follow Goodhart's law that you end up with those companies that are just constantly chasing salespeople. Performative work or time at desk. You see this one particularly a lot in the post-pandemic world, where the boss will say, everybody needs to come back in the office. I need to see people working. Number of hours begins to matter. And the real thing we all like to say, we want the focus is on what you actually get done, and that really needs to be true. The measurement should be working software. There's sort of counter examples that sound like they violate Goodhart's law, but they don't. So number of Jira tickets and number of tickets completed. It's a goal to have your work broken down and tracked properly. I've had people come to me and say, hey, this other person looks like they're working more because they get more tickets in there. And I'll always say, well, the way we measure you is working software, but that person is doing a better job because they're getting their tickets in there. I want you recording your tickets and breaking them down and showing, if you can give me one story point tickets and a ton of them and we're closing 1 million tickets, the overhead of hitting the done button in Jira is nothing. I would rather have them better broken down like that. So that metric of finishing more tickets is actually a goal because we want smaller tickets. It's very similar with releases. We don't run into this one a lot nowadays, but in the beginning move to CI/CD, we would say, we're shipping the same software, we're just releasing it faster. It's just performative. And now we have all this overhead of CI/CD. Instead of doing a release once every 6 months, and it was one big bang release, now we have to go through a big bang release every day. And it was, but the thing is, we want to have those faster releases because we can get the software out there to be reviewed and get bugs fixed faster. We can start selling it faster. It's easier to keep all that stuff in our head at once. You can go see my presentation, my Tales from a Graybeard on microservices. That talks about a lot of those same advantages. So having fast releases is a goal in and of itself, and that's why it's one of the Dora metrics. And number of customers is one that used to drive me crazy. Amazon was losing, 5 cents on every sale they made. Google was losing, they charged nothing for search. They had 1 billion people searching with them, and they were making no money and losing money, hundreds of millions of dollars every year. It was crazy. Twitter still loses money on every user. The idea there is you're building enough of a base that you establish your brand and you establish your industry, so that when you have that base that you need, you can transition into making money, and now people know and trust you, and they will buy from you even if you're pivoting into a different industry. Like Amazon went from selling books to selling everything, and people were very used to buying from Amazon because they were selling to pretty much every book reader out there, and had become a name. Even were they losing money then, when they were able to to start selling stuff that made more money, software and clothes and stuff like that. Everything that Amazon sells now, they had that base. So that was actually a goal, not a metric, or it can be both, but it was a goal. Anyway. So that was Goodhart's Law. Expect to see more of these. Thank you very much for watching this.